You find that when you're investigating places, is it very hard work?
It is very hard work. People seem to think that it's really exciting and glamorous and you're going out there and going to see something. A lot of it is an all-nighter. You're there till the early hours of the morning and you might get nothing happening, but you've still got to be alert, you've still got to monitor, and it's long, long hours. But then the hard work comes after that, when you've got hours and hours and hours of footage and audio and you've got reports to write. It just takes a lot of work, so it's not quite as glamorous as people think. TV makes it look glamorous, but reality isn't.
Have you ever had any experience where you felt that you ought to stop? Just a general feeling that you ought to stop?
Not stop the investigation, but I think you get a gut feeling for not moving forward in places. I suppose with my door slamming incident story, myself and another investigator, the guy who does all electronics for us, and he's sort of been with the jail only with us for about 6 months at a time, and he hadn't really experienced much. And he sort of said as a joke, if there's anyone there, bang a door. So as we walked into the remand centre, which is near where we were, we walked through the museum, and there was a sort of a cell block where they kept the prisoners, and then there was an end door. That end door was open, and we heard a noise down there, and the investigator went, well, hello, thinking someone was down there, and the door slams in front of him, in front of us. We just stood there and going, oh, it could be a lot of things, but the door actually reopened. And at that time, we used to stick on the frame. And this opened freely, and as it opened, actually was a figure on the wall going across the wall and disappeared, a black sort of form, shadowy form. And we both saw it, and the place became very repressive. I mean, really, you could feel the energy levels go bang. It was just really felt nasty. And we didn't move, and we were sort of talking amongst each other, and then after a couple of minutes I said, what did you say to rile him up? Well, I blame him for it. He wanted the door to bang. And he said, I just went, hello. And he goes, hello. Door slams again on cue. And we sort of walked out backwards. Some say we ran out, but we walked out. And there's a poster on the wall which is only cardboard, and it went up near and hit the wall like someone smashed it with their fist. Because normally it would just float down, but actually smashed, and the two doors slammed again. A door down the end and a door beside us, which caught us by surprise. We left the building, came back about 5 minutes later, and we were investigating, checking the door out and doing all sorts of things with it. Is there an explanation for it? Wind could have done it, but we couldn't work out what it was. I'm leaning against the door, just talking, as the door flew open, hit me in the back and threw me straight into the ground. I weigh about 90 kilos, and that threw me a good metre and a half, 2 metres forward.
Wow.
So that caught me by surprise. At the time, we couldn't actually move forward to investigate it because their gut feeling was saying, that's it, don't move forward. So it's one of those times where you just listen to your own gut feeling. I mean, nothing would have happened probably, but it's just, the way we were feeling it, and we both felt that way.
Plus, it's human nature that we're all, to a certain extent, afraid of the dark and afraid of the unknown. So you've got to fight that. It goes against everything that your body's telling you. But at the end of the day, if something's happening that most people would find terrifying, that's the time to move in as well, and that's what we're there for, is to go in and monitor all that. So you have to kind of try and stand your ground in times when it can get quite stressful. You sort of get used to just keeping calm, just trying to think. After all, there's never really been that much history of anybody being hurt by any of this. So you have to keep telling yourself that really, statistically, nobody's really ever been hurt by the subject of the paranormal.
Plus, if one person runs, everyone runs. You'll find that one person reacts, everyone reacts who's within that area. The majority of phenomena that happen, say, taking Adelaide Gaol as an example, is a residual energy, which is basically a point in time that repeats itself over and over. And it's not a ghost as such, it's just an event like phone ringing or footsteps or keys jangling or smelling bread being baked or cigarette smoke. So its majority is that. And that's basically just energy of some type that somehow manifests into a little area and then repeats itself over and over and over a long period of time. And I would say that's the majority of the phenomena we actually experience there. You're hearing history, really, aren't you? I mean, I think it was your little group in 2006 when you had that burning smell in the remand centre. It was sort of a smell of chemical sort of burn, like rubber, plastic sort of thing. And it was only in a certain part of the building, but when we looked through records, that's exactly where the riots were in 1983, where the prisoners lit fires to keep the guards away, and that was in that part of jail. And I think in my report I wrote up it happened at 9 o'clock, and the fires were lit at 9 o'clock at night. And a couple of years earlier, we had an all-night investigation, and we actually got a hot spot, not a cold spot, a hot spot. It was a 8-degree night, and we got 22 degrees in the middle of the remand centre, and that was exactly the same place as the burning smell was in 2006. And so we sort of think that's obviously like a little cryptic clue there. So we went through the records and he actually found, yes, that's where the riots were and that's where the fires were lit. It's very difficult with the footsteps because you don't know whether that's sort of connected to a conscious energy or it's connected to a residual energy. So you have to sort of, I suppose, how it reacts. If it's following the group around on a ghost tour, you realise maybe it's most probably a sort of conscious energy because it's following, and sometimes you might have a residual one which might be walking up the gantry like it's done a million times before over 147 years, as the prison guard would have done the same thing every hour. So it's a bit more difficult.
It shut in 1988. Have you ever had any inmates come on tours or brought them in your investigations?
I was actually selling stuff on eBay, and I said, I might as well meet you at the jail. I've got a tour tonight rather than post it. And he turned out to be an inmate at the jail, so he gave me a little tour because I didn't let him go home without that. And he came up with a couple of interesting things that had gone on when he was there. He said that the cell next door to him, he showed me which cell it was, had been a library when he was there. And at night they could hear the books being thrown around, and they'd get up in the morning and find the books were all over the floor. Now, we didn't even know it was a library because it wasn't in our records as ever being used as a library. So I believe our historian at the jail went in and had a closer look at the cell and found where the shelves were. So it was a library. It actually backed up his story. But he said he had a lot of freaky things happen in there.
The idea that it was haunted even before it was closed is not unlikely.
Oh, it goes back many years. I mean, the prison guards have been reporting a lot of activity, especially in the new building, where there's 21 executions, where there's been sounds and footsteps and heads floating down the gantry and all sorts of weird, wonderful things. And that's from the prison guards. So
I was very lucky, and I tracked down or got to know a prison guard that used to be there in the later workings, and he's written all his memoirs, and anybody can go to the Mortlock Library and look at them. And he was very kind, and he lent me the copy so we could go through them. We found a couple of paragraphs that were of real interest to us to do with the paranormal, and one of them was a new building, and going back into one of the solitary confinement cells, they had an Aboriginal in at the time, and he misbehaved quite on a regular basis. There's 2 solitary confinement cells. If he knew he was going into one, it would only take 2 guards. If he knew he was going into the other, it would take about 5, and he'd be kicking and screaming. Now, eventually they asked him why this was that he didn't like going into this cell, and he said because at night Charles O'Leary, one of the prisoners that was hung there, walks through the walls, the external walls, and stands over his bed. Now, Charles O'Leary is buried on the other side of that wall, but there's bodies buried on the other side of the other solitary confinement cell wall, so if it was just didn't want to go into solitary, he could have used the same excuse there. Now, I have talked to guards that have come in on tours as well, and they've backed me up on that and said, oh yeah, we remember that guy. And he said it's true. We used to have to literally fight him if he had to go into that cell. And that's where we got the voice going, I'm cold.
And finally, do you think you'll both maintain an interest in this?
It's a lifelong interest. You're either born into it and really, really have this interest that never goes away. For me, I mean, I'd like to know once and for all, if I can, and I think it's what everybody wants to know, is there anything after we die?
So that would be what motivates you, do you reckon?
Plus the fact I was born into a house that was possibly haunted, and I've had a lot of strange things happen in my life, and I want the answers to those as well. Even if they're natural, I'd be just as happy with a natural answer. But you do want answers to weird things that have happened in your own life. And
what about you, Jay?
When I started, I was very open-minded. I'm probably a lot more sceptical now than when I started, but I get a lot more excited when something actually does happen or something I can't explain away. But that comes with doing it for a long time. So when something does happen, if I see an apparition or we get some great voices on tape, that's good because you're getting physical evidence. And I suppose I've changed my philosophy a little bit. I mean, to me, the paranormal is just a scientific equation we have not worked out yet. It's physics that we don't understand. It's time and matter and the question mark. And the question mark is the paranormal. And I think once we work out what it is in the quantum physics, get it all sorted out, and then suddenly there's an explanation for it, we just take away the para, and it's just normal science. And then maybe the general scientific community will come on board and start investigating and looking at it as just another form of our natural world that we just don't understand yet. But that's the sort of the view I'm taking now.
I'd like to thank you both enormously for coming along and telling me all about Haunted Adelaide and your experiences and the research you've been doing.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
That was an interview with Alison Osborne and Jeff Fausch, co-founders of Paranormal Field Investigators. Myself, Anna Donoghue, was the interviewer. You can find more information about P.F.I. on their website at www.paranormalfieldinvestigator.com. For ghost tours of the Adelaide Gaol, go to the jail's website at adelaidegaol.org.au. This is Radio Adelaide 101.5 FM. Achievability is up next.